Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome back. Happy Tuesday morning to you. Appreciate you being with me. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma, sitting here enjoying a second and third cup of coffee this morning and sharing some thoughts from God's wonderful Word with you on this good Tuesday morning. I'm in the midst of sharing some thoughts on hermeneutic. That is the science of Bible interpretation. And really, pardon me, it's not just biblical interpretation. This has to do with interpreting any piece of literature. The Bible is not a book outside the rules of hermeneutic. All right? Pardon me, it is subject to those very rules. Now, does it demand things of us? Oh, absolutely. Certainly does. Mostly it demands a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of thought, a lot of study. But the point of fact is, the Bible is a book that is subject to the same rules of interpretation, by and large, as, let's say any other book that you might pick up, that when you would pick it up, you would begin reading. By the way, it's a great new book by Charles Meek, Christian Hope Through Fulfilled Prophecy. Excellent book. I now offer this. You can order it through my websites. If it's not there, contact me. We'll get it up on the websites immediately. But this is really an excellent book. So anyway, the Bible is a book that is subject to the same rules of interpretation as others. What I have been sharing with you is that I have been encountering more and more the argument from amillennialists, postmillennialists, dispensationalists, the claim that since, look, over here, Paul or Peter or whoever talks about the coming of the Lord and he uses certain words. Paul over here, or Peter or John, talks about the coming of the Lord. But look, he uses different words. He leaves out some words over here that he used over here. Therefore, this must be a different coming of the Lord at a different time. It's simply an untenable hermeneutic. It would create total mass confusion. Well, what I've been demonstrating particularly is the dominionist major inconsistency here. I've been demonstrating that, for instance, Kenneth Gentry delineates between 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. He says chapter 2 is AD 70, chapter 1 is the end of time. Why? Because 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 uses a different word for the coming of the Lord from that in chapter 1. You see how they are using this silence of Scripture or different words hermeneutic? Well, I would like to pose a question to you. And by the way, this same identical hermeneutic, before I pose the question, is used by Gary DeMar. It is used by Joel McDermott. As I've shared with you in my debate with Joel McDermott, when I argued from Isaiah 24, 1 Corinthians 15, on the resurrection, and demonstrated that those passages have statements of imminence, when those passages give us a framework of fulfillment that relates to the end of the Old Covenant world of Israel in AD 70. Joel McDermott's only response was, I don't see the word final used in Isaiah or in 1 Corinthians 15. Well, argument from silence. Now, the question. If the use of different words from this text to that text, if the silence of this passage from this passage, in other words, words that are missing, this passage doesn't use certain words that this passage does. If that signifies and demands the identity of different subjects and topics, for instance, different comings of the Lord, then does not the use of identical words, identical terms, identical phrases, identical motifs not demand identicality of subject. Now remember, they're arguing, look, different words here, got to be different subjects. Okay, then if we have two passages that use exactly the same words, exactly the same time references, exactly the same motifs, would that not absolutely demand that the same subject is under consideration? Let me illustrate. Gary DeMar, in his book, Last Days Madness, you can order this off my websites, by the way. I highly recommend this book in many, many ways. It's just really got some great stuff in it. But Gary DeMar, on page 319, delineates between 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, based upon what? Oh, well, the use of different word. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 uses episynagoge, the word for gathering, while 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 does not use that word. Oh, but watch. In this same book, pages 325 and following, Gary DeMar adduces 9 direct parallels between the Olivet Discourse and 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. And he argues thusly. He argues, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, Matthew 24:25, actually chapter 24, contain 9 direct parallels. The Olivet Discourse is about AD 70. Therefore, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 must be about AD 70. Sounds good, right? Well, what Gary DeMar, Kenneth Gentry, Joel McDermott, what none of the postmillennialists share with you, what they would like to keep secret, I suppose, is that there are, I hope you can see this, I'm going to try to edit it into the video, but there are direct, precise, and perfect parallels between Matthew 24:29-31, the Olivet Discourse, and 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. Now, DeMar, Matheson, McDermott, Gentry, all take 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 as the, quote, end of time. They take Matthew 24:29-31 as AD 70. But watch this. In the Olivet Discourse, Jesus uses the word parousia for his coming in AD 70. Paul uses the identical word in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, 15-17. In Matthew chapter 24, we're talking about the end of the age, just as Paul is talking about the end of the age. Although no, Paul doesn't use the term end of the age. But in Matthew 24, Jesus speaks about coming with the angels, with the clouds, with the sound of a trumpet, the gathering of the elect, and he said it would be in his generation. Paul, in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, even tells us, this we say to you by the word of the Lord. And most scholars today admit and agree that what Paul is saying is, I'm reminding you of what Jesus said earlier, i.e. in the Olivet Discourse. Okay, what does Paul do? Paul speaks of the coming of the Lord with the angels, with the clouds, sound of a trumpet, the gathering of the elect, and twice, not once, but twice, he speaks of those of us who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord. In other words, we have several precise, perfect parallels between 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, Matthew 24:29-31. Now, remember, DeMar says because of the parallels between 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and the Olivet Discourse, we must see 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 as AD 70. What happens when Gary DeMar comes to 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and Matthew chapter 24, the Olivet Discourse, and these precise parallels? Oh, he says Matthew 24 is talking about something different from 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. He says 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 is the end of time. Matthew 24 is AD 70. Folks, you see the inconsistency here? If you're going to argue, on the one hand, that use of different words, the omission of given words, demands different comings and different events. And if you're then going to turn around and argue that parallels between texts establish identical nature of subject, then why do you not stay consistent with that when you find the perfect parallels between 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and Matthew 24, 29 to 31? Do you see how horribly, fatally inconsistent the dominionist, and by the way, guess what? The dispensationalists say that Matthew 24 and 1 Thessalonians 4 are different events. Why? Oh, well, Matthew 24 is the Lord coming with his saints. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, he's coming for his saints. No, there is no such dichotomy. Hey, you know what? I've had a lot to say this morning, but I hope you get the point. Folks, hermeneutic is the key to proper interpretation. I've shown you the horribly inconsistent, the fatal hermeneutic of modern futurism. And we've got more. So we'll see you on the flip side.